Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cut Rate Commander, the series in which we take a look at low-price commanders and make budget decks with them. My name is Grazit, and today we'll be looking at the aspiring Ink Master with daddy issues, Killian Ink Duelist. Before we continue, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this content and would like me to continue making more videos like this in the future. Also, be sure to stick around until the end of the video to see what 3 commanders you can vote for in the comments for an upcoming episode. With that out of the way, let's start by taking a look at the commander and playstyle. Killian Ink Duelist is a 2/2 human warlock that costs a white and a black with lifelink and menace and the following ability. Spells you cast that target a creature cost 2 less to cast. Paying 2 for a 2/2 with decent keywords is perfectly serviceable, but we all know why we're actually here, and that's for Killian's static ability for that sweet 2 CMC cost reduction on all targeted creature spells. This ability alone suddenly makes a huge number of overcosted spells throughout Magic the Gathering's history suddenly playable, and already fairly costed spells even better. The main beneficiaries of this discount being overcosted targeted removal spells, which often have cool effects but cost too much, and auras, of many which are overcosted for the benefit they provide. For builds, however, the vast majority of deck builders seem to have come to the consensus that an auras-based build is the most effective way to build Killian, and I would say I would have to agree. Killian already has 2 relevant keywords built in with Menace and Lifelink to get through blockers and keep us alive, while his ability lets us stack him or target creature of our choice with auras quickly to overwhelm our opponents. So in our build we'll be doing just that, running plenty of auras that benefit from Killian's cost reduction, cards that provide benefits for running said auras, and a means to recur them back from the grave to be used over and over again. In addition to this, we'll also be running the most annoying removal spells we can in order to deal with our opponent's threats, either exiling them forever in the case of creatures, or turning them into lawn ornaments in the case of commanders, all of which will have their costs reduced thanks to Killian. So maybe after Killian outduels our opponents by exiling their creatures to the Shadow Realm, turning their commanders into decorative paperweights, and beating them down with his enchanted fists, he'll finally earn Dean Ambrose's approval. Or not, he does look like a hard parent to please after all. So now that we know a bit more about the commander and playstyle, let's start breaking down the deck itself by starting with the creatures. The CMC1 slot starts us off with a single entry with Hateful Eidolon, a 1/2 lifelinker that has us draw a card for each of our auras attached to a creature when it dies, serving as a means to draw back up when our own creatures get removed or when an opponent manages to rid themselves of one of their creatures that we put a detrimental aura on. The CMC2 slot opens up with a trio of cards that care about auras with Hero of Iroas, Core Spirit Dancer, and Shram Senior Edificer. Hero of Iroas is a 2/2 that reduces the cost of auras by 1 and gets a +1/+1 counter on it every time we target it with a spell, both providing us with further cost reduction alongside our commander, reducing the cost of auras that don't target creatures, and being an ever-growing threat if we stack him with auras instead of our commander. Core Spirit Dancer and Shram both draw us a card whenever we play an aura, with the Spirit Dancer being a 0/2 and gaining +2/+2 for every aura on it, making it yet another ever-growing threat, and Shram being a 2/2 that also draws cards if we play equipment, cards, or vehicles. Both of these will serve to keep our hands nice and full as we play our auras, ensuring we don't run out of gas as the game continues. Last in this slot, we play Knight of the White Orchid, a 2/2 first striker that, when it ETBs, searches for a plains and puts it onto the battlefield so long as one of our opponents has more lands in play than we do, serving as decent ramp for us considering our color combination isn't particularly good at getting extra lands into play. Another trio of Aura Matter cards join us in the CMC3 slot with Heliod's Pilgrim, Mesa Enchantress, and Danitha Capuchin Paragon. Heliod's Pilgrim is a 1/2 that, when it ETBs, has us search our deck for an aura, reveal it, and put it into our hand for some efficient aura tutoring. Mesa Enchantress is a 0/2 that has us draw a card whenever we play an enchantment, again giving us card advantage as we play our auras. Danitha is a 2/2 with First Strike Vigilance and Lifelink, who also reduces the cost of auras and equipment by 1, providing us with yet another aura cost reduction source on a body with a number of relevant keywords in case we need to suit them up instead of our commander. Closing out this slot, we have Agent of Fates and Eidolon of Countless Battles. Agent of Fates is a 3/2 Death Toucher that causes our opponents to sack a creature anytime we cast a spell that targets it, turning our auras into removal when the situation calls for it. Eidolon of Countless Battles is a 0/0 with Bestow for 2 and double white, allowing us to cast it as an aura if we do so, gaining +1/+1 for each creature and aura we control, as well as the creature we enchant with it, giving us a potential massive stat boost depending on how many creatures and auras we have on board. Moving into the CMC4 slot, we only have one member with Armored Skyhunter, a 3/3 flyer that, whenever it attacks, lets us look at the top 6 cards of our deck and put an aura or artifact from among them into play, automatically equipping it if it's an artifact, sending the rest of the cards to the bottom of the deck in a random order. granting us a continual way to dig into our deck for auras and cast them for free. Skipping to the CMC 6 slot, we see our last creature with Sun Titan, a 6/6 with Vigilance that, whenever it ETBs or attacks, lets us bring a permanent from our grave back to the field if it costs CMC 3 or less, allowing us to recur our cheaper auras and creatures again and again for continual value. That's it for our creatures, so let's move on to our instants. Skipping right to the CMC 3 slot, we have a pair of exile removal effects with Crib Swap and Ob Nixilis's Cruelty. Crib Swap exiles a creature and gives its controller a 1/1 token for a nice and simple removal spell to remove otherwise problematic creatures. Ob Nixilis's Cruelty gives target creature -5/-5 and exiles it if it were to die before the end of the turn, serving as a decent combat trick and removal spell that exiles. The CMC 4 slot continues with the exile-based removal effects with Feed the Serpent, Eat to Extinction, and Baleful Mastery. All three exile a creature or planeswalker, with Eat to Extinction allowing us to look at the top card of our deck and discard it for some minor card selection, and Baleful Mastery letting us cast it for 1 and a black by allowing another player to draw a card. But mainly we're running these for their exile-based removal and the upside of having them deal with planeswalkers as well. Reaching the end of this slot, we have our last two instants with Utter End and Silence the Believers. Utter End simply has us exile a non-land permanent for a very flexible removal option that has us deal with a variety of threats. Silence the Believers exiles target creature and all auras attached to them, as well as having Strive for 2 and a black to target an additional creature for every time we pay the Strive cost, potentially hitting multiple targets and exiling auras as a minor upside. That's all our instants covered, so let's move on to our sorceries. Moving right into the CMC 2 slot, we have Sign in Blood and Open the Armory. Sign in Blood has target player draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, providing us with some staple black card draw and occasional burn to help close out games. Open the Armory has us search our deck for an aura and put it into our hand for a no-nonsense tutor that synergizes perfectly with our game plan. The CMC 3 slot only has a single entry with Read the Bones, which has us scry 2, draw 2, and lose 2 life for some more staple card selection and card draw in our colors. The CMC 4 slot is another single entry slot with Retether, which has us return all auras from our graveyard into play and enchant creatures with them, providing us with a powerful means of recursion for both our beneficial and detrimental auras. The CMC 5 slot has 3 members with Winds of Wrath, Dregs of Sorrow, and 3 Dreams. Winds of Wrath destroys all non-enchanted creatures and they can't be regenerated, usually ending up as a one-sided board wipe for us, which leaves most of our board intact. Dregs of Sorrow is an X spell that destroys X target creatures and draws us X cards, working particularly well with our commander's cost reduction to remove multiple creatures and draw us multiple cards at a decent rate. 3 Dreams has a search for 3 auras from our deck, reveal them and put them into our hand, giving us some more no-nonsense aura tutoring to further our game plan. Finally, we come to our last 2 sorceries in the CMC 6 slot with Austere Command and Merciless Eviction. Austere Command has us choose 2 of the following 4 effects: destroy all artifacts, all enchantments, all creatures with CMC 3 or less, or all creatures with CMC 4 or more, providing us with an incredibly flexible board wipe we can tailor to our needs on any given board state. Merciless Eviction has us choose to exile all of the following: artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or planeswalkers, again giving us a flexible wipe to clear the board of the greatest threats at any given time. That's it for our sorceries, so let's move on to our enchantments. The CMC 1 slot has 2 members with Ethereal Armor and Edge of Divinity. Ethereal Armor grants a creature +1/+1 for every enchantment we control and First Strike, giving us another powerful payoff for running enchantments with a massive stat gain and relevant keyword. Edge of Divinity grants a creature +1/+2 if it's white and +2/+1 if it's black, giving our commander a decent +3/+3 stat boost for only a single mana. Moving into CMC 2, we have Angelic Gift, Benevolent Blessing, and Spirit Mantle. Angelic Gift gives the enchanted creature flying and has us draw a card, making it a cheap way to grant a creature evasion and replacing itself as a bonus. Benevolent Blessing has flash and gives the enchanted creature protection from a color of our choice that doesn't remove auras or equipment already attached to it, making it a perfect means of protecting our creatures without having our auras fall away from them if we have to select protection from black or white. Spirit Mantle gives the enchanted creature +1/+1 and protection from creatures, providing it with some superb protection and a small stat boost to boot. Up next in this slot, we have All That Glitters, Daybreak Coronet, and Scourgemark. All That Glitters gives enchanted creature +1/+1 for every enchantment and artifact we control, making it yet another powerful aura payoff that provides a massive potential stat boost that also works with our mana rocks. Daybreak Coronet can only enchant a creature that already has an aura attached to it, and grants it +3/+3 First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink, for a sizable stat boost, relevant keywords, and a downside that will rarely affect us considering how many auras we run. Scourgemark gives the enchanted creature +1/+0 and draws us a card when it ETBs, for another cheap enchantment that replaces itself to dig deeper into our deck. Last in this slot, we have Darksteel Mutation, which turns the enchanted creature into a 0/1 insect artifact creature with indestructible and has it lose all other abilities, card types, and creature types, turning any creature into a paperweight and being particularly good against commanders. Moving into the CMC3 slot, we'll start off with our black enchantments with Blessing of Leeches, Soul Channeling, and Grisly Transformation. Blessing of Leeches and Soul Channeling both allow us to regenerate the enchanted creature, with the former costing 0 but costing us 1 life on each of our upkeeps, and the latter costing 2 life per regeneration. Both serve as a manaless way to keep our commander alive, and we can easily make up the life back thanks to our life gain. Grisly Transformation grants the enchanted creature Intimidate and draws us a card when it ETBs, granting us yet another form of evasion on an aura that replaces itself when cast. More black auras are up next with Scavenged Weaponry, Demonic Embrace, and Underworld Connections. Scavenged Weaponry grants enchanted creature +1/+1 and draws us a card when it ETBs for yet another cantrip on an aura with a minor stat boost. Demonic Embrace grants enchanted creature +3/+1 flying and turns it into a demon in addition to its other types, as well as letting us cast it from the grave by paying 3 life and discarding a card for a recurable aura with decent stat boost and evasion attached. Underworld Connections enchants a land, letting us tap it and pay 1 life to draw a card, making a tutorable, repeatable card draw source for us that's difficult for our opponents to interact with. Moving into the white auras in this slot, we have Battle Mastery, Pentarch Ward, and Unquestioned Authority. Battle Mastery grants enchanted creature Double Strike for a huge damage boost that gets even better as we increase the creature's stats further with our other auras. Pentarch Ward grants enchanted creature protection from a color of our choice, not affecting itself if the protection is from white, and draws us a card for another form of defense against removal and creatures that cantrips. Unquestioned Authority grants the enchanted creature protection from creatures and cantrips as well, for some more defense and evasion on a card that replaces itself. Almost at the end of the CMC3 slot, we have Light of Promise, Timely Ward, and Shielded by Faith. Light of Promise gives the enchanted creature +1/+1 counters equal to the amount of life we gain, turning our commander into an ever-growing threat thanks to their lifelink. Timely Ward and Shielded by Faith both make the enchanted creature indestructible, with the former having flash when it is cast on our commander, and the latter allowing us to move it from one creature to another as those creatures ETB, providing us with the means to protect our creatures from most removal, which our opponents will undoubtedly want to do once we start stacking our auras onto them. Reaching the end of the CMC3 slot, we have Bound in Gold, which removes the enchanted permanent's ability to attack, block, or activate its ability unless they're mana abilities, for another means to make commanders useless with the added benefit of hitting other permanents when necessary. The CMC4 slot starts off with some powerful auras with Sage's Reverie, Angelic Destiny, and Inner Demon. Sage's Reverie draws us cards and grants the enchanted creature +1/+1 for each aura we control that's attached to a creature, providing another powerful aura payoff that's both a stat increase and card advantage. Angelic Destiny grants the enchanted creature +4/+4, flying, first strike, and adds the angel subtype to its creature types, as well as returning to our hand when the enchanted creature dies, giving us another massive stat boosting aura, evasion, and even self-recursion in a single card. Inner Demon grants the enchanted creature +2/+2, flying, adds demon to its creature types, and makes all non-demon creatures lose -2/-2 when it ETBs, for a decent stat increase and evasion attached to a mini board wipe. Moving deeper into the slot, we have 2 more beneficial white enchantments with Sunbond and Holy Mantle. Sunbond has the enchanted creature gain +1/+1 counters equal to the amount of life we gain, making it another copy of Light of Promise, which we run for the same reason. Holy Mantle gives the enchanted creature +2/+2 and protection from creatures, giving us yet another means to protect our creature from creature-based harm, though this one comes with a decent stat boost as well. Finally, ending the CMC4 slot, we have Faith's Fetters and Suppression Bonds, both which enchant target permanent and cause it not to be able to attack, block, or activate its abilities, with the former giving us 4 life as it ETBs, giving us yet another pair of offensive auras that can lock down commanders as well as problematic permanents with activated abilities such as Planeswalkers. Finally, we come to our last enchantment in the CMC5 slot with Spectral Ward, which grants the enchanted creature +2/+2 and protection from all colors that does not remove auras, capping off our aura suite with a powerful defensive capstone to provide us with near-perfect protection against anything that's not a board wipe or edict effect. That's it for our auras, enchantments, so let's move on to our mana rocks, artifacts. It's rocks all the way down again this time, starting with the CMC1 Soul Ring, which taps for 2 colorless, and we run because it's the best ramp in our format. Going down the list of our 2 CMC mana rocks, we start off with Arcane Signet, which taps for any color in our commander's color identity, Orzhov Signet, which we can pay 1 and tap to generate both our colors, Talisman of Hierarchy, which taps for a colorless or either of our colors if we have it deal a damage to us, and finally Charcoal and Marble Diamond, both which come into play tapped and tap for a black and white respectively. Having gone over our rock collection and seeing as this deck doesn't run any planeswalkers, we'll be skipping right to our land base. Starting off with our mana lands, we have Command Tower, which taps for any color in our commander's color identity, Cave of Kolos, which taps for a colorless or either of our colors if we take a damage, Concealed Courtyard, which taps for either of our colors and comes into play tapped unless we control 2 or fewer lands, Tainted Field, which taps for a colorless or either of our colors if we control a swamp, Shine Shadow Snarl, which comes into play tapped unless we reveal a plains or a swamp from our hand as it ETBs and taps for either of our colors, Temple of Silence, which comes into play tapped, scries 1 when it ETBs and taps for either of our colors, Silver Quill Campus, which comes into play tapped, taps for either of our colors and we can pay 4 and tap to scry 1, Opal Palace, which taps for a colorless, or we can pay 1 and tap it to filter for any color in our commander's color identity, as well as giving our commander a +1/+1 counter equal to the amount of times we cast it from the command zone if it's used to pay for it. And finally Myriad Landscape, which taps for a colorless, comes into play tapped, and we can pay 2 and sack it to put 2 of the same basic land from our deck into play tapped. For utility lands, we're running Bajuga Bog, Ghost Quarter, and Hall of Heliod's Generosity. Bajuga Bog comes into play tapped, taps for a black, and exiles target opponent's graveyard for some potent graveyard hate in the land slot. Ghost Quarter taps for a colorless, and we can tap it and sack it to destroy target land, giving its controller a basic from their deck to replace it, making it a good source of spot removal for our opponent's utility lands. Hall of Heliod's Generosity taps for a colorless and lets us pay 1, a white, and tap it to put an enchantment from our graveyard on top of our deck, giving us some powerful aura recursion in the land slots to bring back our most powerful auras from the bin to be used over and over again. Lastly, we're running 13 plains and 10 swamps as our basics to fill out our land base. Now that we've covered all the cards in the deck, let's take a look at this deck's breakdown. This deck currently has 13 creatures, including the Commander, 7 instants, 9 sorceries, 30 enchantments, 6 artifacts, 0 planeswalkers, and 35 lands. Looking at the stats that matter to our game plan, we have 35 cards that get their cost reduced thanks to our Commander, 31 auras, and 20 cards that care about auras, giving us a critical mass of spells that benefit from Killian's cost reduction while benefiting heavily from our aura-heavy playstyle. For general deck stats, we have 8 ramp sources, 10 card draw sources, 13 targeted removal sources, and 5 board wipes, being a bit light on the ramp slot this time around, but the curve is fairly low to the ground and most of our spells benefit from our commander's reduction, so it's fine. Then the card draw, target removal, and board wipes are just about where we like to see them. Looking at our mana curve, we have 4 1-drops, 19 2-drops, 21 3-drops, 14 4-drops, 4 5-drops, and 3 6-drops, giving us a hyper-aggressive curve considering most of our 2 to 3 cost spells will be cast for 1 thanks to our commander, allowing us to hit hard early with various means of keeping our creatures alive throughout the mid and late game. Currently, this deck is valued at $65.02, not counting the price of basic lands or shipping. This price was calculated by using the cheapest listed marketplace price on TCG Player at the time of this recording. For some side grades, there are some other auras that warrant consideration. Phyresis, for example, is a cheap way to give a creature infect and lose friends in the process. Flickerform is a powerful way to protect a creature and the auras attached to it from anything. And Faith Unbroken is a decent O-Ring style removal effect with a decent stat boost attached. More means to recur auras from the grave would also be worth considering, with Open the Vaults returning all enchantments and artifacts back from everyone's graveyard into play, and Rise from Glory returning a creature and aura back from the grave. Additional aura payoffs would also be good, with Archon of Sun's Grace and Sigil of the Empty Throne giving us additional tokens, and Doomwig Giant keeping the board cleared with his continual -1/-1 to all our opponent's creatures for every enchantment we play. Finally, some other creature targeting removal options would be worth considering to synergize further with our commander, such as Hex to remove 6 creatures from the board, Slaughter for the continual removal spell against non-black creatures, and Closing Statement for creature and planeswalker removal that comes with an additional +1/+1 counter as a bonus. For upgrades, I would suggest Eldrazi Conscription if you want the biggest baddest aura around to crack skulls. Lurrus of the Dream Den would be a good addition to be able to recur all our cheap permanents. Curtain Call would also be a potent removal spell alongside our commander's discount. And finally, Replenish would also be a powerful recursion spell to recur all our auras, though we would need to replenish our bank accounts once we purchase this one. Thanks everyone for sticking around until the end of the video. As per the votes in the comments, the next Cut Rate Commander episode will be featuring Guillaume, Master Chef, as voted by pretty much everyone in a landslide, as no one cast a vote for anyone else. That means the new lineup will be Quintorius, Field Historian, Zamone, Quandrix Prodigy, and Rutha, Mercurial Artist. Let me know in the comments below which of these three you would like to see an upcoming video on. And with that, have a good one folks, and stay safe.